Hello all and welcome. It's 7:30 here in Poland, very wet and windy Poland. Yeah, give me a 1 in the chat if you can all hear me, because I know my signal has gone live. And yeah, we have Horse. Thank you very much for being here. Good to see you. Mel Donnelly, Hebrews 11:1, Casey, Arnold Nathaniel. Hello everyone. Good to see you all here. And yep, so let me see. Yes. Just drop a 1, let me know I'm live. And otherwise, I'm going to keep on talking and imagine that my audio is working correctly today. So the topic today, of course, is Sharia law. So I'm continuing with the series that I'm also doing at the moment with Al-Fadi. And I will be doing a live stream, or I should be doing a live stream with Al-Fadi this Saturday, 10 a.m. This will be California time, which is going to be 1 p.m. New York time. And it's going to be 4 p.m. I believe it's going to be 4 p.m. Oh, grief. Could be 8 p.m. 7 or 8 p.m. my time here in Poland. Sorry, I'll post it as soon as I know, as soon as I have the details. I believe it's 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, so it's going to be 4 p.m. my time here in Warsaw. Yeah. And then this Friday, I'm going to be live with Chris at Speaker's Corner. This will be at 8 p.m., I believe. This Friday, Warsaw time, which is going to be 2 p.m. New York time, and it's going to be 7 p.m. London time. So yeah, that's going to be interesting. I've got these 2 interesting live streams. So I did put in a new cable, Horse. Yeah, I need to actually, I need to go and buy a right-angled cable. So on the boom arm, so yeah. So I rotated the mic and it hit against this here and it bent and twisted the cable. It's a special 2-meter cable that I have running because it's a bit of a long run. And so I destroyed the cable. So I've got a short cable in at the moment, but so I need to go and I need to go buy a right-angled cable which will fit under the boom arm and won't get mangled when I turn the mic to face towards me. So yeah. Anyway, guys, Deduzo, welcome. So yes, thanks all for the confirmation. So yeah, I worked hard on fixing the audio. Josh Belu, welcome. Good afternoon. All right. So as I said, I'm going to be live on Friday evening, so expect that. That's Friday evening, 8 p.m. my time, and I think again at 4 p.m. on Saturday, I'll be live with Al-Fadi of Surah International. I may go live with Mal, that's Origins, Islamic Origins, although I might sort of move that 1 week or to Sunday. So let me see how that goes. And yeah, I also want to do a new series covering Ethiopia, which is some of the history of the early church. Looking at so covering a little bit of the Nicene Creed, looking at the development of the early church, especially in Ethiopia, and then looking at the Ethiopian influence on Islam. So it's like an introductory level. I don't want to make it too detailed, but it's designed to look at early church history and looking at some of the common myths that are spread about the early church, the Nicene Creed, which is something that people just love to get wrong. And obviously deliberately so. The Great Commission, Shalom. So Carmel, welcome. I don't know if we've met before, but yeah. Anyhow, guys. So today, let me start with this. Let me jump over here. When are we getting the church in Arabia? Anytime now, because Islam is a religion of peace. Didn't you know that? And they are a religion of tolerance, and you're gonna get a church any day now. Right. So let me go here. I wanted to bring this up. Find a specialist music electronics store for the right angle connector and perhaps get a spare one. Yeah, I can find it online. The problem is you have to buy for a certain minimum or they charge you delivery, right? So, but yeah, so I need the right angle cable because that will fit. I measured it. I checked it. It'll fit. It'll fit here on my fingers. It'll fit under the boom arm so I can rotate the mic for pickup. And, yeah, so anyways, luckily I didn't damage the mic connector. I damaged the cable, so. Carmel, thank you. I listen very often. You're amazing. Thank you very much. Much appreciated. No Push-Up Monday, Sergeant Grinch, welcome. And Tim Chapman, welcome all. Use a left angle and put it in backwards. Yeah, well, either one would fit. I can just wrap it around the boom arm. So, yeah, so the first legal slave owner in the American colonies was Anthony Johnson, a black man. So just to annoy people, of course, which is why I do things. This is a black man. This is not a white man. This is not the result of white supremacy that forced a black man to do things. This is a black man who sued in court to enforce his right to own a slave, illegally, by the way. Not just that slavery is illegally, but this slave was to be freed. Okay, use a left angle. So, Anela, welcome. So let's have a look at this court case, because I just thought this would be fascinating for people. So as I said, the first legal slave owner in the American colonies was Anthony Johnson, a black man. Not a white man, a black dude. On 8 March 1655, John Case of Virginia became the first person to be legally declared a slave for life. For life in a court of law. This is his owner, Anthony Johnson, who went to court to get the verdict. John Case was given to Johnson and as a result became the first man in North American colonies to be legally classed as a lifelong slave, which consequently made Johnson the first legally recognized slaveholder in American history, creating the precedent for lifelong slavery. Queso did indeed remain in Johnson's service until his death. Johnson had been captured in his native Angola by an enemy tribe. So wait, white people didn't go to Angola and capture him. No. Other black people did this. And he was sold to Arab slave traders, Muslim Arab slave traders, just so by the way. He was eventually sold as an indentured servant to a merchant working for the Virginia Company. In 1653, John Queso claimed his indenture had expired 7 years earlier and that he was being held illegally by Johnson. Johnson sued in Northampton Court in 1654 for the return of John Queso. The court initially found in favor of Parker, the slave, but Johnson appealed, and in 1655, the court reversed its ruling. This was the first instance of judicial determination in the 13 colonies holding that a person who had committed no crime could be held in servitude for life. So, look, what I want to do is Black Lives Matter needs to jump on this immediately. Okay, we need to see all the woke-tards jump on this right now. And they need to start condemning black slavery, the black origin of slavery in America. So yeah, guys, if anyone, I will post this on my community tab later, but start sharing this to people, just to annoy them, just to explain to them that, yeah, that slavery in America was actually a black thing, you know? So, yeah. Anywho, so just wanted to show you guys that. For the sake of deeply annoying people that deserve it. They'll be outraged, you know, they don't want to know about the truth. Yeah. And, yeah. So, let me see. Good evening from the bath. Oh my golly, that's great. Yeah, well, as long as you found great company in the bath, and that's fantastic. You know, if my work is that interesting, then awesome. Are you confusing us with facts? That's what I do. I am, you know, I told people before, I come from Africa. I attended a school for emotionally disturbed teachers. And then that's had a lasting impact on me for life. So let me see. Okay, we're talking about the origin. So this is the timeline of the Sharia, right? So I'm not as familiar with this as some of the other stuff. So let's just jump in and see where we go. So we need to talk about Muhammad, the Umayyads, and the Abbasids. So late Meccan converts, Abu Sufyan and Abbas, were progenitors of the two great Arab houses to rule Islam as an empire. Bantu education, Daduza, that is true. So Abu Sufyan was of the Umayyads, and they ruled from about 661 to the year 750. And they were in Damascus. I actually went to an old Umayyad temple. Not temple, palace, which was in the Lebanon. It was actually quite amazing. I spent some time there. I have some photos somewhere. I need to find it. But yeah, it was quite amazing to see that they had this temple not far from Damascus, because I wasn't that far from Damascus. So they had a temple, it had a temple as part of it, but it was a palace. It was beautiful. It's actually quite amazing. Ruins, but well preserved. Groete from Pretoria. Yeah, groete allemaal. And Abbas of the Abbasids, the Abbasids ruled from about 750 to 1258 in Baghdad, which was very far removed from Arabia. So these guys were all in the northeast. So now you're talking Iraq. Right? This is pretty far away from the epicenter of Islam, of Mecca and Medina. Now, what is interesting is that we have no preserved Umayyad historians. So the figure of Abu Sufyan lies largely unredeemed in the debris of early Islamic history. In other words, it would seem that the guys who superseded them, the Abbasids, would have somehow scrubbed the history of the Umayyads. So they got rid of the early history. So there's not much to be determined. They got rid of the enemy history. So yeah, so Islam seems to have a history of deleting older history. Sergeant Grinch says, my family's been in the North American continent since 1725. I don't owe any person anything. They built this nation, fought in all its wars. Now my country's being destroyed by socialists. Yes, it is. Look, I will tell you this. This is from my unprofessional analysis of what's happening in the US. The US is under, at the moment, extreme terrorist assault. America is suffering from a severe terrorism problem. When you look at, just as simple examples, you look at the number of train derailments, you look at the number of attacks on your food manufacturing facilities, the number of failures, fires, you look at the electrical grid, the number of attacks, and I'm not just talking about failures on the grid, like for maintenance. I'm talking about what looks like sabotage, bullets, AK-47 rounds shot at your transformers to destroy them, bombs, grenades, the destruction wrought on your electrical infrastructure and other issues that are happening. This is not accidental. This is not accidental. This is orchestrated. It's the death of 1,000 cuts. It's not like a massed army, but there is something happening. You've got small cells, to my mind, you've got small cells operating, destroying huge amounts of American infrastructure, slowly but surely, and they are starting to cripple the nation. This is a massive terrorism problem in the United States right now. It's invisible, but it is there. It is organized, it is coordinated, it is happening. So, greetings from South Africa, Save Muslims channel and website, welcome. And the news is nothing but head fakes to distract our information. Yeah, low information voters, yeah, no. So, yeah, okay. So, moving forward, Illuminati Lloyd, look, I mean, look, the Muslims, the Sufis, the scholars claim to be the original Illuminati. Do be aware of that. The Sufis explicitly claim to be the Illuminati. They claim to be the original Freemasons. They claim to be the origin of the Freemasons, that they created the current Freemasons, but that they are the true Freemasons at the top of the pyramid, right? So the Sufis claim to be the original, the true Illuminati. In fact, the term they use is that they are the perfect Illuminati. So bear that in mind. This is an Islamic thing. Sergeant Grinch, yeah, 50 million non-citizens. Oh, good grief. I'm going to have to switch off my audio, so I don't want to make that noise. Okay. Muslims want to claim everything, certainly, but I think they have a point here. So, yeah. So 50 million non-citizens is a serious problem, Sergeant Grinch. Okay, so the many historians who wrote under the Abbasids did their best to rehabilitate the memory of Abbas. And of course, just as these historians who wrote did their best to rehabilitate the story of Muhammad. I mean, despite the fact of the blatant sexual deviation of Muhammad, in spite of the blatant immorality of Muhammad, they still want to rehabilitate his image, right? So this is typical. This is just standard practice within Islam. So they rehabilitate what is going on, right, with these people. So Muslim tradition has Muhammad marrying Habiba, who is Abu Sufyan's daughter, in 628, and Maymuna, Abbas's sister-in-law, in the following year. So there's a strong connection to these Umayyads. Now, is this true? Who knows, right? Maybe this is how they claimed legitimacy. Okay, so next thing. Now, the prophetic period. Let's have a look here. So Muhammad is born here, roughly 570, supposedly. Okay, the prophetic period runs from 610 to the 4th of September, 632. Okay, so the Quran is revealed over 23 years, right, starting in 610 and ends over here roughly about 632 when Mo dies, right? Now the Quran is transcribed onto bones, rocks, sheep intestines, right? And according to Islamic tradition, no mistakes were made, right? So no mistakes were made. Well, sheep intestines, as we know, a sheep ate one of the chapters, so yeah. Then all of the hadith and the sunnah occur. So now this is where Uthman finalizes the Quran. So in theory, anyway, this is where all of the hadith and the sunnah occur. Okay, so this all happens here. Not that it's recorded, but just that this is where it occurs, right? And they obviously claim no mistakes were made. Then the foundations of the Sharia, which is their legal system, and the Fiqh, the jurisprudence, the application, the exegesis of all the revealed sources inside of the sheep. Yep. So the foundations of the Sharia, right? This is the revealed sources. And the Fiqh, which is the exegesis of all of this into a cohesive and coherent body of law. All of this is established in this period, right? So in this very short 23-year period. Give me 1 second. I need to disable something on my phone, which is going ape. Okay, now there is no need for ijtihad or independent legal reasoning during Muhammad's lifetime, because there's Muhammad. He is there to interpret everything that's happening. So his word is law. So there's no need to do any kind of interpretation at this point. And give me 1 second. I'm just killing an app because my phone's going wild and my PC is lighting up. So, okay. So ijtihad is something that the scholars did much later. So they had to go through the revealed sources. They had to go through the Quran, go through the Sunnah, right, which is the Hadith, the Sirah, and so on. And they had to go through all of the opinions of the scholars, and they had to determine from that, how do we structure a legal system? So the ijtihad, that really happened later, and there was a lot of debate about that. Then you had the four scholars that emerged who founded the four schools of fiqh, right? Hanafi, Shafi, Maliki, and good grief, can't remember the fourth one now, but we'll get to that. Anyway, so they did independent legal reasoning, but they did absolute legal reasoning. They're the only four scholars who have this right. They are given the title of the Mujtahid Mutlaq. So they are able to do absolute reasoning, perfect reasoning. They do not need to follow anyone else's guidance or thoughts. They are independent. They are able to do this on their own. No other scholar can do so on his own without reference to them, without the support of other scholars. But these four scholars are considered absolute and perfect. So the truth says, according to research, the Islamic narrative opposes history, and it goes completely. Steve Worth, yeah, Lloyd, there are churches in Saud only underground, and that is most likely true, yeah. And yeah, I mean, there are churches in Iran, so the church is growing hugely in Iran, and Iran's probably got 50% apostates. It's not public, but you can't publicly declare that you're an apostate. Okay, so Meccan surahs show pseudo-Christian religious influence on the Quran. So that's interesting. The Meccan surahs show pseudo-Judeo-Christian religious influence on the Quran. However, the Medinan surahs show a legal influence. So now suddenly you're switching from a religious sort of ideology to a legal ideology. So now there's a switch as they get to the later period around here. Okay, Medina also happened to have 8,000 to 10,000 Jews. The Jews had a fully finished legal system. Around the time of Muhammad's birth, the Talmud had been completed. So now they had a template they could copy to start creating their own version of the Talmud called the Shariah, right? And notice that the word surah is a degree. The word surah technically means degree. It doesn't mean chapter. I know we've been force-fed the idea that it means chapter. It means degree. Like you have a degree in Freemasonry. You have like 33 degrees. You have a 33rd degree Freemason. A surah means degree, a degree of knowledge. Okay, so let me see now. Okay, Arabs had customary law. Right? So customary law, in other words, they didn't have a writing system. They didn't have, these Arabs at least, didn't have a written system, right? This came later. Which is odd, though, that the Arabs prior to them, the people prior to them, did. They had a full writing system. They were fully literate. And they had multiple languages. They were multilingual. So this is very, very odd that these guys didn't. They had customary law. So basic tribal customs, which were effectively their law. The Jews had a written legal system recorded in the Talmud in Hebrew and Aramaic. Do note that, right? So both of them, though, both of these groups spoke Arabic. They lived in Arabia, they lived in Iraq, and they both spoke Arabic. It should be noted that Aramaic was the lingua franca in Iraq for hundreds of years, for a long time. In Quran 1094, it says, "So if you are in doubt, Muhammad, about that which we have revealed to you, ask those who have been reading the scripture before you." That would be the Jews, right? That would also be the Christians. But in terms of the legalities, Christianity has a moral law. It doesn't have civil law, whereas the Talmud has civil law. It's a full legal system designed by lawyers. Right? Arabic is younger than Christianity, and that is true. Arabic is a fairly new language. And of course, as we've shown before, Arabic is made up of something like 2,000 plus foreign words. But of course, there's something like 50 plus languages, like 55 languages that make up Arabic. Now, the Jews had a detailed corpus of theocratic law because Islam became a theocratic legal system, right? Theocratic religious system, as was Judaism, although there are significant differences. Now, the usul, the roots of usul al-fiqh, the roots of the fiqh, is a metaphor for a tree. The tree of life is the Torah. So they're borrowing this Jewish symbolism. They're borrowing ideas from Judaism, right? So the usul al-fiqh, the roots of the fiqh, the sources of the law, the sources of jurisprudence, right, is a metaphor for a tree. And of course, the whole idea of the Talmud, the tree of life, and so on. So the word Quran is derived from the word qara'a, which is to proclaim, to read aloud. Now that's actually quite significant, to read aloud. Now, the Jewish scripture was also known as the Miqra, and the Christians, right, had Kiryana, the reading or the lessons. So the word Quran is actually derived from Christian practice, from Aramaic Christian practice. We'll have a look at that in a moment. So let's look at the Sonsino Talmud. This is Kiddushin 49a. And quite bluntly, if anyone's going to start with the Talmudic conspiracy theories in the comments, I will ban your ass. I have no patience, zero. And if I'm going to start getting Talmudic conspiracy theories in the comments later, I will ban you. I know the Talmud better than you do. Let me be blunt about that. I've spent months reading it. I have detailed notes in it. I've done a couple of dozen shows in it. So really, I don't have time for that. I'm not saying that it is inspired scripture. I'm not saying it's all holy and good. It's weird, but 99% of what people say about the Talmud is complete crap. Okay? It's utter garbage and nonsense. So, yeah, if we're going to criticize it, let's be honest about it. Lying about it, no. This happens way too much. So, yeah, with so much Jewish influence, they had to say that Torah is from Allah. So, yeah, well, yeah. So, anyway, moving on. Our rabbis taught, on condition that I am a Karyana, once he has read 3 verses of the Pentateuch in the synagogue, she is betrothed. Rabbi Judah said he must be able to read and translate it, even if he translates it according to his own understanding. Okay? If one translates a verse literally, he's a liar. If he adds thereto, he's a blasphemer and a libeler. Then what is meant by translation, our authorized translation, now, that is only if he said to a Karyana. But if he says, I am a Kara'a, he must be able to read the Pentateuch, the prophets, and hagiographa with exactitude. So hold on. Kara, this is now coming from Karyana. This is coming from Jewish Talmudic literature, right? This is from the Talmud. The term Quran comes from the Talmud. This is not an Arabic idea, right? So I am a Kara, which means that I must be able to read the Pentateuch. This is the Torah, the 5 books of the Torah, the prophets and the hagiographa with exactitude. So it is to read with precision the major books of the Old Testament. Now there's a couple of things I want to mention here, okay? So notice here, this is Mecca up here. This is Najran. This is Yemen. This is a place called Qaryat al-Faw. I just thought it's interesting, so I thought I would mention this in here. Qaryat al-Faw. This was the home of the Kinda who invaded from Yemen, went up here, and they eventually conquered this whole area. They were moon worshippers, right? They worshipped the moon god of Sumeria, of Babylon. Now notice within the... Thank you very much. Thank you very much. I really am grateful. Appreciate the donation. That's really nice of you. Thank you. Okay, so now we've got Qarya, right? This is in the Encyclopedia of Islam. As a Quranic term, okay, Qarya indicates an important town. Now, town, a village. Mecca, Medina, Sodom, Nineveh, and the coastal town are also called Qarya. So this is interesting. Qarya, Sodom. I mean, Sodom and Gomorrah, right? This is bad, not good, okay? Now, and Al-Qaryat Ain is a Quranic term for Mecca and Medina. So Qarya indicates an important town. Now, as I said, this town is called Qaryat al-Faw. Al-Qaryat Ain is a term for Mecca and Medina. So hold on. They're basically putting Mecca and Medina in the very same category as Sodom and Gomorrah. This is weird. Nineveh. What is Nineveh? Hold on. Let me find out. Let me just Google this quickly. Nineveh was a Syrian city in Upper Mesopotamia, Mosul in Iraq. Okay, so Nineveh. So obviously I'm sure that has got some kind of pagan significance and of biblical significance. Can we infer there were Talmud scholars who converted to Islam and helped them set up the Sharia? Yes, that definitely happened. This is within the documents that I've read, the scholars that I've read this topic. Yes, they make that claim. That is definitely so. So notice it's very odd that you've got Qariat al-Fal, this pagan moon-worshipping group, right? And then within the Encyclopedia of Islam, this term, which comes from the Quran, indicates an important town, but it lumps in Mecca, Medina, and Sodom. This is nuts. I mean, this is incredibly nuts. I don't know how they can do this. And then Qariat Ain, Qariat al-Fal, pagan towns, Mecca and Medina, lumped in as on the same plane as Sodom. This is just nuts. God destroyed Sodom. So, by the way, Qariat al-Fal is the capital of the first Kinda kingdom. I covered this in monotheism. Thank you, Karan. I'm really grateful. Thank you very much. Now, originally, it was known per the corpus of inscriptions in the site as Qariat du Qal, right? Qal was the main deity worshipped by the Arab tribes of the Kinda. Qal was al-Makkah, right? Makkah was Shin, or Swen, okay? As Mick M mentioned there, Shwen, or Sin, right? And Shin was the Allah of the Kaaba, right? Shin was also known as Baal, right? Oddly enough, the main god, Baal was not the main god. Baal was secondary to, good grief, there was a trial, there was Ashtaroth, or Ashtoreth. Baal was the third, and there was one above, the god of Canaan. Hold on, let me just have a look. Let me just look this up. The main god of Canaan. The main god of Canaan was El. Yes, the main god of Canaan was El. Okay, and then his companion was Ashtaroth, Asherah, and then Baal was the third in the Trinity. So the Kinda worshipped Baal. Baal was the Allah of the Kaaba. Now, the city developed from a small caravan passing station into an important commercial, religious, and urban center in central Arabia. So it actually became very important. So bear that in mind. So they thought just an odd linguistic connection there. Right. Now, the prophetic period, 610 to September 632. Right. Ishtar and Bel. Yes, correct. Baal, correct. The Canaanite god Bel, Ishtar, Ashtaroth, and she was the companion of El. Bel was the third of the triumvirate. Right. So Nineveh, Jonah was sent by God to preach repentance there. He disobeyed at first. Boat, storm, fish. Thank you very much, Arnold Nathaniel. I appreciate that. Yeah, unfortunately, my knowledge of the Bible is not as good as my knowledge of this Sharia nonsense. But yeah, so it's significant. So I don't know, look, I mean, I haven't dug deeply into that, but I just thought it's a very odd series of connections, very odd series of coincidences that maybe would be worth examining if someone would take a look. Now, I'm referencing this book here. Islamic and Talmudic Jurisprudence, the Four Roots of Islamic Law and their Talmudic Counterparts by Judith Romney Wegner. That should be linked in the description, all right? Otherwise, go to my description box, check the links for my full archive, find this there, Judith Romney Wegner, look for the name, Wegner, or Judith, or whatever, or Islamic and Talmudic Jurisprudence, just find it, the paper will be there available for you to look at. So, is this an Arabic Quran? The Aramaic-speaking Christians called their scriptures the Qur'ana. So that's very odd. Qur'ana. Aramaic-speaking Christians called their scriptures the Qur'ana. Though the term Qur'an is morphologically closer to Qur'an than Mikra, because the Mikra also refers to the Quran, the paper does say this suggests a Christian influence on Muhammad. I would say this suggests a somewhat Christian, but obviously all of the Christology in the Quran is pseudo-Christian. It's pseudo-biblical. It's not orthodox. All of it is heretical or gnostic. The recitation of the Quran in the mosque is called the Qira'ah, right? The precise equivalent of Hebrew Qira'ah, public Torah reading, which again then argues for Jewish influence. So yes, Asherah, exactly. So Mik and yes, Ashtaroth. Is she Lilith? That is probably true. Deduza, from what I've looked, from what I've seen, that probably would be the case. So notice notice here the language overlap. Okay, the Quran of the Aramaic Christians, okay, which is what they call the Christian scriptures. And then you've got the Quran by the Muslims, and then you've got the Jews speaking of the Qira, which is right, the Qira'ah, which is reading the Torah publicly, which the Muslims called Qira, which is them speaking in the mosque. So is this a coincidence? I mean, chances are no, obviously not. And in coining the term Quran, Muhammad used Hebrew. I mean, who was Muhammad? Okay. Mal, I did a show with Mal a couple of days ago. As you know, on Saturday evening, I did a show with Mal, and that was brilliant. Eventually, as we were talking, and we started to become this organic sort of discovery process, and I believe Mal is onto something very powerful. I think he may well have found a 4th century source that is the source for the Muhammad myth. I want to put it that way. The source of the character. I believe Muhammad's a composite. I mean, generally speaking, I think Muhammad's a composite of multiple historical characters. But I think that the template, I believe Mal may have found the source of that template. It's the closest the best that I've heard in terms of the description of who this character is. So I think Mal has found the original source material. Kitsune, thank you very much. Just thoroughly enjoying the stream, Lloyd. Edifying as always. And by the way, yesterday I did a talk for the first time on Clubhouse. I was told there were hundreds of people listening. I mean, when I looked the once at the beginning, it was about 170 people listening. I was told there were hundreds, but yeah, this Clubhouse thing, it went on for 3 hours. I had to stop talking. My voice was hurting. So I was not expecting that. But people were just asking questions and they wanted me to go on. No one wanted me to stop, and the numbers kept climbing, and it was very popular. So this Clubhouse thing, really people seem to enjoy it, because apparently I've been very popular on Clubhouse and people were asking for me to show up. So Karen Thompson says, yes, you and Mal had an amazing show. You worked very well together. The conversation flowed. No, thank you. Thank you. I do believe I interrupted him a little bit. But yeah, man, he's definitely onto something. And I think that information is going to bring something brand new to this. And also what's interesting is last year Mal he didn't really understand my work. He didn't understand what I was doing. But now that he's had a chance to look at it and we've had a chance to talk, what happens is that my work corroborates his, right? It's an earlier layer that they haven't investigated. So his stuff builds on top of that. So I fill in the blanks. So I not only fill in the earlier layer, but also I fill in gaps in their own knowledge. So our work actually corroborates each other. So this is fantastic. I mean, I've gone from the fringes to actually being mainstream at this point. I recall your sessions with the 99% a year and a half ago. Yeah. Pity you couldn't get UT on Clubhouse. Oh, Ultimate Truth, yeah, but apparently he's a bit of a foul mouth. So, hello, Dragon. Welcome. And, okay. So, now in coining the term Quran, Muhammad used Hebrew Aramaic terminology, because Qira'a is not a native root in South Semitic Arabic, but was borrowed from North Semitic Hebrew or Aramaic because of the earlier development of literacy among the northern Semites. The emphasis on an Arabic Quran is an attempt at legitimacy to equate the Quran to the Torah and the Gospel. As you know, if we go to Excel, so let me see here. Let's go to the foreign words in the Quran. Okay, so this is available. I've made this available, but let me get the link. Share the link. Copy the link. So let me just copy this link. I'm going to drop this Excel sheet. I'll just call it Excel sheet. That's the link. So I've dropped it. Has it come through? Because okay, there seems to be a bit of a delay. Let me go to the YouTube chat. Okay, there it is twice. Okay. Much better. Okay, so I've dropped that now in the chat. So there you go. This is the Excel sheet, Foreign Words in the Quran, Jeffrey. Okay, from Arthur Jeffrey. And this shows us there are foreign words in the Quran. So Syriac and Aramaic are effectively one language. Okay, so this is the box. So now you're looking at about 682 words. This is a 1938 survey. Okay, this is a 1938 survey, which means that this survey is old. It's actually out of date. Okay, this 1938 survey is out of date. So I know for a fact by going through an Ethiopic dictionary, there are more words that can be found if we take a look today. This is nearly a century later, though, if we take a look. Syriac and Aramaic are, oddly enough, a huge bulk of the foreign words in the Quran, right? Think of this as one language. Hebrew would be second. Okay, 257 known words in 1938. Then the Greek. Then comes Ethiopic, and Ethiopic would be tied with Amharic. That would be one language as well. 200 words. Now, what is interesting is if you go down here to number 22, here you go, Coptic. Coptic is only 10 words. Now, that is significant. Let's go up here. Wow, simple. Good grief, it's, I think it's Simple Jack, right? Thank you very much. Wow. Really grateful. Appreciate that. Thank you. Right, I want you guys to have a look here at this, okay? So this is Egypt. Cairo's up here somewhere, right? Cairo's up here on the coast, right? Near this area. Or somewhere here, can't remember exactly. So anywho, let's find Cairo. What the heck? There we go. Okay, this is Cairo here at the source of the Nile, just at the delta. Now, what is interesting, Coptic has only 20 words. Now, Petra is not far away. Okay, Petra is right here. So you would expect to see cultural links here. Okay, but Coptic, Petra, it's very, very close. But there are more than 20 times the words from Ethiopia down here than there are from the Coptic up here. Okay, and so the Quran is supposed to be like, Islam is supposed to be heavily influenced by Petra, which is the northern thesis, which is Mal and J and so on. However, what is significant is that you've got so few Coptic words when they're supposed to have a very strong cultural link and historical link, but you have literally 10 times more Ethiopic words, and there's a whole lot of Ethiopic customs within Islam, within the Islamic practice. Huge numbers of, and huge connections historically, linguistically, to Ethiopia, to the south, and to Africa, right? Which is very, very odd. So there's a stronger connection south, at least from foundational level. And then also, when you look at the connections to the Islamic practice within Islam, certainly there's an overlap with the gods, right? With the gods that Muhammad worshipped. However, there's far more overlap with this region here, Yemen and Ethiopia, far more within the history of Islam. So this has been overlooked, but Mal is starting to look at this as well, and I've heard Jay talk about this as well. So this is starting to become a thing. I mean, I started speaking about this a couple of years ago. Finally, people are starting to cotton onto this. The Greek has a direct link with the pseudo-medical sources the Quran used. Yes, of course they do, yeah. And yeah, I mean, Greek has a very powerful influence, like the Ethiopic translation of the Bible, which was present. So the Ethiopians had a Bible present in all of Arabia in the 2nd century already, 2nd, 3rd, 4th centuries. The Ethiopians had their Bible. So the first complete Bible, top to bottom, available in Arabia was the Ethiopic Bible, which was complete and was based on the Greek. It was all translated from the Greek. Okay? And also, what is interesting is that the Ethiopic language, the Ge'ez, is the most closely related of the Semitic languages to Arabic. Arabic is a Semitic language. And the closest language to it of all the Semitic languages happens to be the Ethiopic. So the linguistic connection between this Arabic here and the Ge'ez is tighter than any other language, including the Coptic. So there's a connection here that is being overlooked. So notice they mention here something like 55 languages, as you can see, and over 2,000 words. And I'm sure if we look, we will find far more words. So like 14% of the words in the Quran are foreign. Okay, let me put that away. Right, so in coining the term Quran, Muhammad used Hebrew Aramaic terminology. So Qira is not a native root in South Semitic Arabic, but was borrowed from North Semitic. And the emphasis on an Arabic Quran is an attempt at legitimacy. And I felt that way as well. And I mean, this is not corroborated by this, right? They want to equate the Quran with the Torah and the Gospel. And obviously, it's just plagiarism. So thank you, Dragon. Always kind to have your support. Much appreciated. All right. So let me see. Did I miss any comments? And yeah, and thanks again for the donations. I'm very grateful. I appreciate it. Thank you. Okay, so now, this is odd, just something interesting to bear in mind, but Moses said to him, let the one who reads the letter be the agent to fulfill its contents. So Moses said, this is in the Talmud Sanhedrin 82a13, right? Let the one who reads the letter be the agent to fulfill its contents. So what happens to Muhammad in the cave of Hira, right? He gets squeezed by an angel, all right? And he gets told to read. Now, I know in some versions it's recite, but he gets told to read. Now, apparently he is illiterate. Okay, he's illiterate. He gets told to read. Right? The angel squeezes him and he says, read what? Read what? Read what? Well, Moses is the template for Muhammad as well, right? Muhammad, if you look in the Sirah, does claim to be closer to Moses than to Jesus. He's fulfilling the ancient law of the Old Testament, the Mosaic law. Now, what's odd is, within the Talmud, you've got, let the reader of the letter be the messenger who delivers it. Muhammad read in the cave, and then he became the messenger. He delivered the message, right? So he delivered the message that he read. Understand? So this is a parallel here to Moses. Muhammad's pretending to be Moses. Oddly enough, within this, you've got these words, right? Quran, Qariyan, Qariyanna, reader or proclaimer. So the Quran comes from this, it's taken out of from the Hebrew. You've got Quran, Qariyanna, right? Reader or proclaimer, one who proclaims. Muhammad proclaimed a message, right? He was a warner or whatever, but he was also one who read. So, in the cave, and he proclaimed a message. So it's very odd that the word Quran is taken from this Hebrew. And they have one who makes, so the meaning here, one who makes a proclamation. Let the one who makes the proclamation be the one who delivers it. And you've got this term also now referring to calling or reading, right? Now we know in Islam you have the call to prayer, right? And the reading of the Quran. So I just thought this is very, very odd, a very interesting Hebrew connection to this, okay? So this is very, very odd that you've got this Hebrew Quran. So clearly there's a Hebrew connection, Hebrew-Aramaic connection to the word Quran. So it's not an Arabic word. It is most certainly Hebrew and Aramaic in origin. So any thoughts from you guys in the meantime? Does this all make sense, guys? I'm not a scholar. I'm not a PhD scholar, obviously, but I'm collecting all of this information. And to me, it looks, there's something here. There's evidence that needs a verdict. There's evidence that needs to be dug into. This is clearly something that's been overlooked. And this evidence is sitting there. Scholars are refusing to draw a conclusion on this basis. They look at the stuff and they go, I don't want to get stabbed. I don't want to get vilified, by not a real Muslim. So, you work it out. Thank you, Horst. He says, enlightening. Thank you. No, I much appreciate it. They shouted in Ethiopia during the early years of Islam, so it makes sense that there was cultural absorption. Now, yes, I've made that point multiple times over the last year or so, because the very first hijrah, as I've covered in other shows, was to Ethiopia. So the very first hijrah in Islam was not to Medina, but to Ethiopia, and the Muslims stayed there for about 15 years. So clearly they borrowed practices and words and ideas, and the Christian Ethiopia, the Christian Orthodox Church there, right, the Trinitarian Orthodox Church in Ethiopia was very Jewish and still is because they were kind of isolated. But also the word Tawheed, which is fundamental to the understanding of Allah in Islam, is an Ethiopic word. It's actually taken from the Ethiopic, right? Because the Ethiopic church is called the Ethiopian Orthodox Tewahedo Church. Tawheed. Tawheed, Tawheed, Tewahedo, right? And this refers to the Godhead, the unification of the Trinity, right? The integration of the Trinity to make many one, a complex unity. So the word Tawheed is taken by the Muslims and they borrowed it from this. Jibril squeezed Quran out of Momo like a tube of toothpaste. Exactly, man, yeah, and you can't put toothpaste back in a tube, can you? The Duza, my research is PhD level. Thank you. PhD, as you all know. Okay, so PhD, he says, that's my research. As you know, PhD is Latin for piled high and deep. Oopsie. Yeah, PhD is Latin for piled high and deep. So yeah. Okay. Thanks to Duza. What, Talhead? Let me see if I missed anything. Swarb on Earth. Yeah, I believe in it. Yeah, exactly. So this is all weird. Yeah, so let me see. Okay, so let's continue. So the Rashidun period. So I'll probably go for an hour today. Came from gym. I'm pretty exhausted. And yeah, I've got a heavy day tomorrow, next couple of days. So Rashidun period, 632 to 661. Right, so Momo dies here. Okay, rest in peace, good old Mo. Burn in hell, more like it. May the police be upon him. Okay, now here you've got 656, where apparently Uthman finalizes the Quran, and he has 661. So Uthman finalizes the Quran after burning all the rest, I think. So the Quran is finalized as a written text under Uthman in the period 644 to 656. So roughly from here to there. The Hadith and the Sunnah remain oral traditions. They're not written, they're still oral traditions, and they were not considered legal sources. They were not considered sources of law. So Josh Majumdar, Quran is derived from Tamil. Look, I wouldn't make such broad blanket statements that I would say there's certainly Hindu beliefs in Islam. I would almost certainly say yes, because from what I've seen, I just haven't had a chance to dive in, but it's pretty blatant and obvious, I think, just from what I've seen. But I wouldn't say it's from one source. It certainly doesn't come from one source only, right? So Quran, Hadith, and Sunnah are understood to have a purpose, all right? And now you've got the beginning of the Sharia. the fiqh and ijtihad. The Sharia are the revealed sources. The revealed sources now written, right? This is what is known from the history and story, like the Gospels, the Bible. You read the Bible and God says, you shall only eat strawberry ice cream and you shall not eat chocolate ice cream. Okay? Chocolate chip is okay, but not plain chocolate. That's in the revealed source. That's what God said in the Bible, right? So now they know you can have vanilla, you can have chocolate chip, but you can't eat chocolate. That's the Sharia, revealed. Okay? Josh Majumdar, the founder of South India. Look, make a video, write a book, whatever it is you need to do, but you need to back up a claim like that with a little bit of evidence, okay? You can't simply make a blanket statement. I have hours of evidence to back up tiny points, okay? I have hundreds of pages to back up things. I don't just make statements, right? I bury people under citations. I bury them under books and references. So, I mean, no, it's not. Clearly not. There's too much evidence to the other side as well. I'm not saying there's no Indian influence, but you can't simply make a blanket statement because that ignores the mountain of evidence on the other side for the pagan influences and the gnostic influences and all of the other things. So, okay, now the fiqh is, okay, we've got all these laws that Muhammad said, the things Muhammad said, these are laws, right? The things he implied, the things he didn't do, these are all laws. These are all examples, right? The fiqh is, how do we take this and turn this into a legal system? What do we do with this? How do we exegete this? That's the exegesis. Ijtihad is reasoning. How do we reason? Right? What is the reasoning process? That's your independent legal reasoning, independent thought. Okay? So now, and Carmel, yes, and Muhammad, if you read the Sirah, the Gospels, he is the replacement Jesus. He is the counterfeit Jesus. Okay? So, moving on. So, the personal reasoning and interpretation of the Rashidun held authority. Okay? Rashid means orthodoxy or rightly guided for the first 4 caliphs. Right? The Khalifa. Notice the term caliph as a title after the first 4 caliphs. Khulafa al-Rashidun. Okay, Abu Bakr, Uthman, and Ali. Okay, now I want to show something here while I'm here, actually, which seemed to have annoyed people greatly recently. I showed something, and one Muslim was just going wild about it. Okay, so... Okay, let me bring this over here. Okay, so let me... Okay, so yeah, let me ignore that till later. Okay, so the term Khalifa, now it's very interesting. The term Khalifa doesn't mean what we think it means, okay? So Khalifa, plural, Khulafa, Caliph, as a title after the first 4 caliphs, okay? The Al-Khulafa al-Rashidun, the rightly guided caliphs. Now, Abu Bakr, Umar, Uthman, and Ali. And this, the caliphate, right, the caliph title passed to the Umayyads and then to the Abbasids. But it was also assumed by the Spanish Umayyad, blah, 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 and his successors. But notice, in political theory, right, Khalifa is the title of the leader of the Muslim community. The full title is Khalifat Rasulallah, successor of the Messenger of God, who carries the same authority as Muhammad. So he is to be obeyed without question. He is in line of authority, right? So, but notice now, what is odd is when you read the Encyclopedia of Islam, the gold standard academic reference on Islam, I'm just thumb-sucking a number here, okay? But like 40% of the Encyclopedia of Islam references magic, references occultism, references mysticism, magic spells, rituals. See, like, you know, wizardry, you know, like, huh? Like, hello, Cross and Crescent, welcome and thank you. So understand, this is very odd. When you go through this academic reference, like nearly half the references in Islam are somehow linked to magical practice, to witchcraft, sorcery, and it's just like, huh? You know, it doesn't make any sense. So notice, Khalifa, right? In mysticism, Khalifa may have any of the following meanings, all carrying the idea of vicarship, right? So it's a wizard priest. It's a wizard priest, which is a pagan practice. The priest was the king, was the wizard, was the, okay, so the Qutb, or the perfect man, al-insan al-kamil, or this translates from Arabic as insane as a camel. This is Muhammad. He was the perfect man, right? He set the perfect example, and through following certain rituals, you can become perfect. This is the spiritual alchemy to create the perfect man. Don't forget, the Nazis created the perfect man. They had the Untermensch, and they became the Übermensch, the perfect man. The Soviets made the perfect man and woman as well. Okay, let me just go and do something here. And so, yeah. Okay, then, now you've got the idea of the perfect man. So this is a spiritual perfection, but this is what the Gnostics were doing as well. The Gnostics were seeking to do some sort of process to take them out of this world and perfect them, right? And around whom the spheres of being evolve. So the whole world revolves around you. When you become perfect, the whole world revolves around you. That's man become God. And notice, upon whom the Muhammadan reality, which is the hidden side of his own reality, irradiates. Now, this is important. You must understand. So, hold on. I need to find Mishkat. Okay, have a look at this. Okay, so... Okay, have a look at here. They speak of those who stopped short of complete illumination, identified Al-Mutta with Allah, okay? But they speak of here the perfect Illuminati, perceived that Al-Mutta, the obeyed one, is not more than... This is all very, very complex, deliberately complex Gnostic-style speech, okay? Oops, let me just get that. Okay, so, hold on. Not sure what's wrong here. Give me a sec. Okay, so here he says that the perfect Illuminati, notice this is Al-Ghazali, the most respected scholar in Islam. He is calling the Islamic scholars, the Sufi, the perfect Illuminati. Okay, he's calling them the perfect Illuminati. All right, so let me, I'll close this, but understand, this is what they call themselves. So now, why is this important? This is important because the Muhammadan reality, Muhammad is the substrate of the world, the substance of the world. The world is created through the spirit of Muhammad. Allah made the world with the spirit of Muhammad. So Muhammad is the spirit of the world. He is the light of the world. He is the true reality. Sorry about that. So what happens is, so you then become like Muhammad. You become like the perfect man. You are joined with the reality, which is Muhammad. So, yeah, and this irradiates. So you irradiate, so you're the Illuminati, you're illuminated, okay? Illuminated. So understand, the Muhammadan reality, which is the hidden side of his own reality, irradiates. So that is the illumination, that's the Illuminati, that's the source of the idea of the Illuminati. And they speak of mystical perfection, and you're granted permission by the spiritual master to initiate novices and to guide them on the mystical path. And they speak of the Sufi sect of the Bektashi. So, any questions or comments or thoughts on that? Okay, so let me continue. All right, so that's the Rashidun, the rightly guided caliphs. So hold on, I was talking about... So yeah, so there is magic. So the term caliph or khalifa also happens to have magical connotations. Okay, crazy magical connotations. So any thoughts on that? Because, I mean, that's very, very odd. And why aren't we discussing this? So now I've got the Umayyad, 661 to 750. So the Umayyads established the foundations of Islamic law under their qadis, judges, judging according to sound opinion, okay, which is called rai, and customary norms. So this is within different regions, different geographical reasons. You've got different customs because different tribes, different countries, different religions, different people, and they've got all of these different norms. And what happens is this is all merged into Islam, right? This is one of the foundations of the Sharia, that customary practice has the force of law. Okay, so see Encyclopedia of Islam, Fiqh 92, 884, further expansion. So actually, let me go there. I've got to find this reference now. Encyclopedia of Islam, Volume 2. Okay, so let me bring this up here. Okay, so Arab customary law, as modified and completed by the Quran, not only did Arab customary law survive to a considerable extent, but the Muslims did not hesitate to adopt the legal, commercial, and administrative institutions and practices of the conquered territories, even the legal concepts and maxims, okay? So they actually absorbed all of these practices into Islam. So it's not just Arabic. Okay, let me see. David Bond just showed up. Give me a sec. Is an ordinary man like anyone else mentioned, except he was selected as the prophet? Any other explanation? David, you're wrong. There's actually a very simple answer to that. You are completely wrong. And you clearly are not familiar with your own scriptures. Now, I would hate to think that an anonymous layman like yourself would call your own scholars liars, would say that your own scholars are wrong. Now, if you can show us the book you've written, which is award-winning and given awards by major scholars and major schools of Islam, then that will be fantastic. But no, because Muhammad, according to your seerah, which is very, very popular, Muhammad was born, no, not born, he was with Allah at the beginning. Muhammad was made from the light of Allah. Muhammad was with Allah before the earth was created. Muhammad's light, Allah took a piece of Muhammad and he put it into Adam, the first man, which was the light of Adam. And then, of course, he put it into Moses and Noah and David and all the prophets and Jesus. And their holiness was just a subset of a small piece, a small sliver of Muhammad's light. So, unfortunately, you clearly have no idea what's going on in Islam. All right. Now, from the first decades of the 2nd century AH onwards, it began to be projected backwards, they speak of, and to be ascribed to some of the great figures of the past. So notice, J. Smith has spoken about this at length, that what the Muslims have done is taken modern practices and projected them backwards. And this practice happened within Islam. It's within the Encyclopedia of Islam. They admit this, that they projected, when they found they got legal things here that they're projecting backwards and saying, hold on, these are traditions that go back hundreds of years, when these are new. So they were trying to legitimize practices that they were coming up with. These scholars are saying, hold on, we interpret the Quran like this, we interpret the Seerah like this, here's what we think we should do. And they are back projecting it and saying, well, these famous scholars from back in the day, these guys thought the same way, and therefore what we are saying is legitimate and must be implemented. So this is a practice that goes back as a long history within Islam. And notice here the differences between them. So they speak of the differences with those of Kufa, Medina, and Syria, okay? So the schools of law, and they speak of the differences. The differences between them were caused in the first place by geographical factors, such as local variations in social conditions, customary law, and practice, but they were not based on any noticeable disagreement on principles or methods. Okay? So notice, even though they were geographically different, there were certain similarities, right? There were certain similarities, and they just absorbed what was outside of that scope into themselves. So let me close this here. Let me see, did I miss something? Customary law as opposed to, do you mean their normal standard law? Yeah, customary law is just traditions, customs of the tribes, right? Nineveh was the capital of the Assyrian Empire at the time of Judean prophet Isaiah. It is present-day Mosul. Yes. Okay, so next, let's have a look at this last reference here in the Encyclopedia of Islam. This is volume 2, page 926 in the PDF, but on the page itself, it's page 888, if I recall. Yeah, 888. Okay, so they mention here, at the same time at which the doctrine of the school of Kufa was retrospectively attributed to Ibrahim al-Nakhil, or al-Nakhai, a similar body of doctrine was directly connected with the very beginnings of Islam in Kufa, by being attributed to Ibn Masud, a companion of the Prophet who had come to live in that city. And Ibrahim al-Nakhai became the main transmitter of the body of doctrine too. So basically they were backdating things. Okay, so Muslims were backdating practices into the past as they were making up the new law, as they were inventing the new legal system. They were backdating stuff. In the same way, another companion of the Prophet, Ibn Abbas, became the eponym of the school of Mecca, and the school of Medina claimed as its main authorities among the companions of the Prophet, the Caliph Umar and his son Abdullah bin Umar. One further step in the search for a solid theoretical foundation of the doctrine of the ancient schools was taken in Iraq, very early in the 2nd century of Islam, by transferring the term Sunnah of the Prophet from its political and theological into a legal context, and identifying it with the Sunnah, the ideal practice of the local community, and those corresponding doctrine of its scholars. So they were arguing amongst themselves as to how to create a body of law, jurisprudence, and thus they created this. Okay, so yeah. So they were backdating things, and they were trying to claim that this goes back historically when it did not. Okay, so David Bond, these are all fabricated writings which tries in Islamic not accepted by major scholars to elevate the status of Muhammad to divine. Dude, stop lying to me. You know, if there's one thing I detest, it is, this is your opinion, you are wrong, right? You are absolutely flat out wrong. I have no time for that kind of nonsense. Okay, this is your opinion. Okay, I have no interest in your opinion, none whatsoever. Right. So you need to explain why hundreds of years of scholars and thousands of scholars are all wrong, and you suddenly come along and like some guy that's not even your real name, and somehow you're right and all of your scholars are wrong. So just bear this in mind. This is some of the historical development that happened. So the Umayyads established the foundations of Islamic law under their qadis, their judges, and they judge according to sound opinion. Okay? And two schools emerge. You have the people of the Hadith, the revelationists. This is the revelation itself, right? We have to follow literally the word of Allah, the revelation and the word of Muhammad. And the two are twins within the Islamic law. Muhammad and Allah are both considered lawgivers. They have identical authority. This would be shirk. Okay, so who misunderstood who? So the ones who take Islam as truth believe that about Momo. So I worked with a few insurance companies that were backdating documents regarding procurement and sale of asset. Backdating is fraud. Thank you, Horse. That's a very good comment. Backdating is fraud. Yes, it is trying to claim legitimacy for something that's a fake practice. So you hold a semi-mythical viewpoint in Momo. Look, I mean, where's the archaeology of Mecca? Like nowhere. Where's the historical evidence, the proof of Muhammad? Like nowhere, right? I mean, so where's the evidence? And I mean, you can argue, well, absence of evidence is not evidence of absence. Well, there's no freaking evidence, right? So where is it? Right? We need to find some. I mean, at some point you go like, well, in 1,000 years, we're going to find that, no, look, there's no evidence. Let's just give up. So clearly it's a composite. I believe Muhammad's a composite of multiple figures put together that needed a guy. Now, I'm not saying there wasn't a guy or another guy or three guys or five guys, and they kind of like bit of him, bit of him, bit of him, and boom, there you go. Like James Bond. I mean, James Bond is a composite of all of the heroic people you can think of, right? All the good things you put together into one guy, and there you go, James Bond, right? So anyway, so you got the revelationists. They were based in Mecca and Medina. This was in the seat of Arabia, of course, the cities of the Prophet, right? Textual authority is more important than personal opinion and more important than reason. So in other words, what is written, these are strict scriptural apologists, right? Whatever is written in scripture is more important than what you can think, right? So your brain shut it off. Listen just to what the scripture says. And the people of reason, the Al-Rai, rationalists in Kufa and Basra in Iraq. So now you've got this geographical split and you've got this intellectual split. So you've got the guys down here versus the guys up here. Okay, so what have we got is you've got this distance. So you've got this distance of 1,450 kilometers, which in miles works out to, come on, where's miles? So that works out to 900 miles separation. That's pretty big. Okay, these guys are arguing back in the day. So now you've got these guys arguing over how to interpret the Islamic text, the Quran and the Sunnah. And they said that informed opinion, ijtihad, in the absence of clear textual authority, because the Quran is a very small book. It doesn't contain everything. Okay, so now the Arabs conquer Mesopotamia, right? Syria and Palestine in the period 633 to 651 AD. Jerusalem and Ctesiphon fall by 638. The Persian Empire had a centuries-old tradition of formal lawmaking and jurisprudence, right? And what you find is that they're now borrowing from this Persian Empire as well, right? So material influences causing changes in the doctrines of other Islamic law schools continue to proceed almost exclusively from the law schools of Iraq. Shaht concluded with Goldzier that Mohammedan jurisprudence originated in Iraq. So that's an interesting point there. So ultimately, because remember I mentioned that in Medina you had 8,000 to 10,000 Jews, right? Theocratics, who had a theocratic legal system based on the Talmud, which had just been completed not long before, right? And some of these would have been Pharisees. They were extremely strict, right? There were these nutcases who were following the Talmud very strictly, which means that they weren't open to necessarily. Yeah, some of them would have obviously been heretical, right? A little bit crazy, as we know. But notice that material influences causing changes in the doctrines of Islamic law schools continued to proceed almost exclusively from the law schools of Iraq. So this is from two major scholars, Shaht and Goldzier. So Mohammedan jurisprudence originated in Iraq. Right, so yeah, you make of that what you will, but it didn't originate in Arabia. Now later on, these two schools, this separation, this conflict between them was merged by Shafi'i comes along, and Shafi'i finds a way to to harmonize between these two schools, to bridge the conflict. And his ideas become the basis later on, after his death. His ideas become the basis for how to move forward to integrate these schools to stop the whole conflict and how to integrate this difference. So, yeah. So did I miss anything? How can the pure Razm without the vowel sounds have textual authority? Well, yeah, Islam doesn't make sense, buddy. That's a fact. So, look, David, you are, so look, David, when it's convenient, Muhammad is just a messenger. When no one's looking, when everyone's looking the other way, Muhammad becomes perfect and infallible. Muhammad suddenly becomes the actual Jesus that everyone should be worshipping, because he's Jesus, he's God in Islam. He actually is, right? So yeah, I don't have time for the nonsense. Okay, this is your opinion. That's nice. I'm going by what the documents say. Why don't you show us what the Sirah says, right? And if the Sirah is false, written by people who are lying, then I want you to pronounce takfir on those people for lying about Muhammad. Please do. Okay, so I'll end here. Okay, hopefully that was helpful. Okay, so let me see if I missed any questions. The one to take Islam. Okay, so yeah. So look, I'll end here. So now you've got this. And so Mohammedan jurisprudence originates in Iraq. So now we've got to go to Iraq and have a look at what's going on over there. So, but yeah. Notice, final slide then, Persia to Plato. Most of the leading Sunni imams were Persian. That's very odd. So here's Arabia, here's Babylon, right, Iraq. And now you've got Persia, Iran. So oddly, this leading Sunni imams were Persian. Abu Hanifa, Persian. Al-Nisai, Persian. Tirmidhi, Bukhari, Muslim, Ibn Majah, Al-Ghazali, Ibn Sina. And Al-Farabi. Al-Farabi was very, very interesting. He's actually a really influential scholar in Islam in the development, because the idea of the caliphate, right? They needed to find a template to create a perfect state because of this growing, these camel herders were now suddenly owning vast amounts of territory, managing vast amounts of territory. So he goes and takes Plato's The Republic through the lens of the Neoplatonists, and he creates the idea of the caliphate based on Plato's Republic. So he's actually a critical scholar in that sense. So yeah, so I'll end here. So notice the influence is now shifted away from here. It's moved here and then here across this way. So things are changing. Okay, so Momo was real, judging by the criteria of embarrassment earlier. Look, clearly they are basing this on people who are clearly left of base here, off center, right? So someone was real, but there was definitely no one Muhammad. There's just no evidence of one guy, right? So yeah, guys, thank you. So I'll end it here. Hopefully that was helpful. And no, thank you, Corin. Much appreciated. So guys, yeah, thanks. I have to go. And hopefully that was, you learned something. So we'll see you guys next time. I will see you guys on Friday. Okay, I'll be live with Chris at Speaker's Corner. Really interesting guy, really knows what he's doing. So thanks, guys. Take care.